Hello, good people. My name is Mr. Estelo. Today, we want to talk about introduction writing. Alright, it's very important to master the skill of writing good introductions. One of the things that I would like to say that don't write an introduction that covers the whole page. An introduction must be short, not very short though, but it must also cover the following things. So there are items that must come up in a good introduction. But before I talk about those things that come up in a good introduction, I would like to highlight some of the very important things whenever you're writing an introduction. First of all, an introduction must be question focused, not topic focused. So basically, this means that whenever you're writing an introduction, you answer the demands of the question. So don't just write an introduction because you're well versed with the topic, but you will write an introduction after reading and understanding the question. And then your introduction must be limited to the question demands. Don't just write everything that you know. For example, if the question asks you about the Ndebele-Shona relations, in your introduction you have to talk about those things, the Ndebele-Shona relations. You're not supposed, even in your essay particularly, you don't need to talk about everything that you learned about the Ndebele-Shona. You have to talk about the Ndebele-Shona relations and make sure that your sentences are short and meaningful. Avoid long sentences. Write short sentences that are meaningful, and we are also supposed to highlight your points. Avoid one word points, stating points, but try to highlight your points based on the question demands. Are we together? And the next thing that we have to avoid flowery language that I'm going to cut the butter, I'm going to nail the coffin. You're not a carpenter, my friend, but you're a historian. So basically, these are some of the key things that you have to take note whenever you are writing a good introduction. So there are things, like I said before, there are things that are coming out in a good introduction, and therefore, this is according to Mr. Estrella. Number one, make sure that whenever you write an introduction, there is a question statement. A question statement, make sure that whenever you write, let me just give you a good example. Let's say the question, how far true that Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution? How far true that Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution? What you are supposed, when you are starting this introduction, make sure that you say the view that Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution. Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution. The view that Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution. That is what is called the question statement. So a good introduction is four things that are coming out. Number one, you've got the question statement. Number two, you have judgment. You judge straight away. You tell us that is it to a greater extent or to a lesser extent. And I want you to know this. It depends with you. You can say to a lesser, you can also say to a greater extent. It depends with you. You judge based on what you know, the content that you have about that particular question. Alright, and next thing, make sure that you balance your essay. Whenever you are balancing your essay, you balance your essay by saying however. So you have to balance your introduction by saying however, and you highlight your points. So these are some of the key things that are very important in any introduction. The question statement, make sure there's judgment, and after the judgment, make sure that you balance, and after balancing, you give your final judgment. So let me just give you a good example of a good introduction. How far true that Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution? According to me, Napoleon is to a greater extent. Napoleon was an heir, according to me, to a greater extent. So how am I going to write this introduction? The view that Napoleon Bonaparte was an heir to the French Revolution is to a greater extent. This is because Napoleon used the Montesquieu theory of separation of powers when he reorganized France. Number two, Napoleon created, it's my second point, Napoleon created social stability in France through the Concordat. Three, Napoleon created employment through the public works. Are we together? So these are the points that indicate that Napoleon was an heir to the French Revolution. Like I said, I will say, first let me start again. The question statement, the view that Napoleon was an heir or child of the French Revolution is to a greater extent. This is because Napoleon used the Montesquieu theory of separation of powers when he reorganized France. He created social order through the Concordat, and he also created employment in France to the Frenchmen through the public works or schemes. However, then remember that any introduction must balance. However, even though Napoleon, apart from Napoleon being a child of the revolution, there are some instances where Napoleon violated revolutionary principles of liberty, fraternity, and equality. When he reintroduced the lex decadence, it's a sign that Napoleon is violating the revolutionary principles. Why? Because he reintroduced the lex decadence, he created a police state under Voce, he excluded the girl child from education. You give all other things when Napoleon seemed to be reactionary, or when Napoleon borrowed the things from the ancient system of government. Thank you so much for listening to Mr. Estrada.